This is a special meeting to discuss the New York Rising projects as requested by myself and the Board of Trustees to speak with regards to the portion of the New York Rising $3 million that was awarded.
Okay.
Okay.
We need a new recorder desperately.
Virginia, I told her to go to Mike and show me what she's thinking.
Who's connected?
That was magic.
Just waiting for the go-ahead.
No, the power's on, but the tape is not moving.
That's my other job, technologist.
With many hats.
Tree committee, recycling committee, community foundation. All for nothing.
Oh, efficient this year. Yeah, really. Oh,
See?
That's not the usual recorder, is it?
look. Yeah, this is the better one.
Better one.
This is what you use for planning board, but.
I'm rolling if it
The
matters.
tape's not moving.
I'm gonna turn the power on and turn it off.
The other tape is-
Oh, are you sure that, out
The
in the
power's
lab?
on.
Yeah, it's on, it's working, but it
The tape
stops.
itself is like
Losing.
I have another tape,
Yeah, of course. Fred Rella, he's not the public.
Okay, so this is a special meeting with New York Rising to discuss the board's concern with the flood mitigation analysis that was awarded, monies from the $3 million that the village was awarded through the New York Rising. So the reason that we asked you here, Suzanne, and if you'd like to introduce
Amanda
Amanda.
Hanson, who is the managing director for Upstate for New York Rising.
and could you just spell your last name for
sure, Hansen. That was Ron.
Amanda.
Yep.
So Suzanne, the reason that we asked for this meeting today is the board in its entirety is very concerned with the $1.2 million of the New York Rising money that was awarded to the flood mitigation analysis of the Mawa watershed. I'm going to let each trustee give you what their feelings are on it, but we kind of were a little confused as when we first were brought the New York Rising program, it was our understanding that once the committee had given the projects to New York Rising, that they would approve certain projects and then the village board would have some say-so in the projects that would go forward from that list of approved projects. And it seems that the village has not had any input whatsoever on the use of the money that was awarded to the village for this particular project. So I'm going to go around the room and let our trustees voice their concerns. And if you want to hear them all first, or if you want to address them one at a time, whatever makes it easier for you, you'll let us know.
Okay.
Okay? Mr. Hagen?
All right, so, hi Suzanne. Last time we met, you said you would spend $1 million of the $3 million on a watershed study?
Yes.
Because it connected to the siphoning system or just as a study?
No. If you
To
like,
do it.
I can give you a little background,
Okay.
refresh your memory.
Oh,
Okay. So I came on board in July at the first meeting of the planning committee for the New York Rising program for Suffern. Okay. At that point, the committee had been formed, and we had our first meeting. The purpose of that meeting and that committee was to go through a planning process to discuss impacts of Irene, Lee, and Sandy on the village, and to figure out strategies to help the village become more resilient. And in the case of Suffern, because so much of the impacts have to do with flooding, was to figure out flooding mitigation projects. So as you probably recall, this committee had a consultant that New York Rising brought to the table, AKRF, and they helped us through the entire planning process. They documented all of the decisions made by the committee, all of the information they brought forward, and that resulted in a plan that each of you have a copy of. So in this plan, we discussed the strategies that the committee came up with, but also specific projects. Now, let me just take a step back, because in one of the early meetings, the quarry project came up. And I understand that there has been a lot of interest in this project because so many people in the Squires Gate neighborhood are affected or flooded by the Mawa in certain level storms. So I think there was some misinformation or some misunderstanding that originally the New York Rising program was to fund the quarry project. It was not. And I understand that even some elected officials were confused about that. But it really wasn't. It was to look at, to develop a planning process and to look at flood impacts across the village and to come up with strategies and specific projects. Now, obviously the quarry project came up. It was on a lot of homeowners' minds. So we brought in Brian Brooker and he made a presentation. And he explained that he had done some conceptual work on the quarry project, which is to siphon the Mawa during a storm event, hold the water in the quarry until the storm subsides, and then release it back into the Mawa over a period of about 40 days. We explained that at this point, we don't have enough information, and that project does not develop far enough for us to be able to fund it. But we did say that what we would do is we would look at the entire watershed and figure out flooding mitigation projects within the watershed, and we would also, at that time, look at the quarry project.
I have a quick question while you're there. It's
Yeah.
one of my questions for later on. I might as well do it when you're in the midst of it. So let me just ask you, if in fact you did this study, would this study be acceptable to the Army Corps of Engineers to use, or would they still have to do their own study if in fact they chose to go forward with any type of mitigation for the Mawa or Bronco River?
My understanding that some work has been done. This study would entail looking at that work and doing, again, a preliminary review, but that if it was decided then to go forward with the quarry project, you'd have to undergo a major engineering design and review. And it would take a significant effort to do that, and it would take some time to get the permitting, both from Army Corps of Engineers and DEC.
But they would have,
So that's a
they would have to
separate
do their own studies and their
Yes.
own, okay.
Yeah.
So that, I think that's where our concern is that, you know, ultimately, if anything is going to be done there, it's going to have to be by those agencies who will not be able to use, I mean, they probably will maybe refer to it, but they're still going to have to go through their process of a study to do the work, and they're the only ones that can do that work. So, go ahead.
Other people, you know, you could hire an independent engineering company to do that project, to design that project. It would still have to be approved through the normal permitting process by Army Corps and DEC.
Right, but what I'm saying to you is if the Army Corps is going to do any type of work there, they're going to want to do their own study.
I suppose if they are.
Yeah.
Now, I
So
should
why
just,
spend $1 million?
I think
Right.
we'd have to assume that they would. They're a separate entity, they're a separate government entity,
Right.
they
So we're
can't
saying
rely
this is
upon-
great to identify all of these things, but in essence, if any of these things have to be done, they're going to have to do their own study anyway. So why are we using that money for a study, which is kind of just to be able to put it as an informational piece of paper, rather than using that money elsewhere, you know, for things that are actually going to happen, instead of a piece of paper that really is going to be no good if the Army Corps of Engineers does choose to go forward with a project or any of the agencies for that matter.
And I think there's a feeling out there among the homeowners that, and rightfully so, that this problem that has existed for so many decades has been studied to death over the years. And so the feeling is, and that I realize new studies need to be made at times, things change or whatever, but the frustration is, you're going to study it again. Where is this getting us at the end of the day? And I think that's what I hear in any event.
Exactly, and I
It's
think that's what,
understandable,
I think that's when you look at this on the whole, while it's wonderful to have, is it a waste of money because, in fact, this work's gonna have to be done over again anyway.
May I ask a point of clarification? Sorry.
Sure.
Is the Army Corps going to be doing work in this area? Is that confirmed?
Well, what we did was, we reached back out to them. They have done a total of 3 studies over the years. And it seemed to be every time we got to the point where the study was complete and they were ready to actually get on board to start making some plans for some remediation, there was a tsunami or there was some world disaster somewhere and all of the funding got sucked up by all of that. So our little Suffern, that's like, you know, a dot on the map to them, didn't seem to be high on their list.
I see.
So we kept getting knocked down every time.
When was the last time they did a study?
The last study was in 2001, I think. I think it was 2001.
Right after,
Right. I believe it was 2001, but it's around there. So we have reached out to them, and they have expressed a desire to go forward. So what we're doing now is, did Ellen Jackie reach you, by the way?
Yes, but she did not mention that.
Okay. So what we're working on now is, and her office will be contacting you, is going back to the Army Corps of Engineers, because things seem to be quiet in the world at the moment, and expressing to them, look, you know what, enough is enough already. You've done this to us 3 times already. We're not a dot on the map. There's human beings here, there's human life here, there's, you know, we matter. And you've done the study 3 times, so you know that there's work that could be done here. We need action on this. And hopefully, you know, we'll get something done. The sad part of it is the only thing that's going to make the big difference down there and the lack of devastation down there is what the Army Corps of Engineers can do. I mean, all the other little stuff that we do is great because it may take away some in one house or some in another or a little bit less, you know, but, you know, in the grand scheme, we're putting Band-Aids on a wound that's just never going to heal without them. So I think our concern is that if we're using this money for this study, that's just going to be a study, you know, that everybody can go, oh, look, there's a study. Is it a waste of money at this point in time? And I just feel like it's our duty as the elected officials to make sure that this awarded money is spent for benefits for the village. And, you know, together we've looked at it and we just feel as though that's not the case and we've really had no say-so. So this is the first time that we're getting the opportunity to actually voice our concern about it.
Okay, just a couple comments to that issue. As you know, the town of Ramapo had applied to do a project in the Suffern Quarry for flood mitigation. They applied to FEMA through the hazard mitigation program. Although I don't believe they've been told formally that the project was not accepted, most of those awards have been made. They were made last year, and I understand that pretty much the funding has been allocated. Again, that's not a rejection letter, but it's my sense that did not rise to the top of projects that were funded.
And I think that may have a lot to do with the fact that the DEC has stated that they won't give a discharge permit for the quarry. So I think they already know that that's not something that's going to happen. So the project is, you know, is a moot point if you're not going to be able to get the permits that you need. So I'm kind of having that feeling that that's the reason that it kind of got dropped off the radar.
Okay, so are you suggesting, Mayor, that Army Corps wants to do a different project with the quarry?
Yeah, the quarry actually was something that the Army Corps looked at one point, but they did not feel as though that was going to make the difference. They felt as though you were talking about inches as opposed to feet.
Yes.
So again, another Band-Aid. I mean, in a short-term solution, great, because it's a little less water, but in a long-term solution, which is what this village needs and wants and is due, it wouldn't make that big difference, was the Army Corps' feelings on that. So they did have other plans for the river, which included taking out the bend of the rivers at 2 different points, widening it. It included probably having to take down a few houses. So there was a lot of structural work to the river that they felt would be very effective in preventing further devastating flooding down there. So, you know, that was the hope, and that really, I mean, there's no other way that I've been given by the Army Corps or anyone who's looked at the river to say that to stop the flooding, A, B, or C can be done. It's this major reconstruction of the river that's going to be the point to take this flooding away.
Okay, well, why don't we just go around and continue, Frank, I'm sorry, I went on a long tangent, did I?
No, the mayor kind of, right, you and the mayor already answered that, whatever.
Okay.
Well, I agree with the mayor.
Write that down.
It's on tape.
July 22nd.
I think we should take a short adjournment of the meeting. Collect that thought.
The thought behind it is wonderful, you know, in the study of the watershed, but obviously it's going to benefit dozens of other communities up along the watershed routes and serve no practical purpose for the village of Suffern. We've had watershed studies, and the Army Corps of Engineers has come up with plans. They feel the quarry is a practical solution that may or may not be accurate. You know, the technology changes in 20, 30 years. But my understanding this money was for practical, viable solutions that can help the village. The watershed is going to generate 4 more ideas of what we could do in the future. Should we get $10 million to change the course of the river, dig a deeper well, what have you, and in all practicality, it serves no use to the existing residents in this village. They're going to be faced with the same problems and dilemmas, and I know there's nothing that 1.2 million is going to cure, but I'm certain that it could be put to use to eliminate some of the obvious problems that we have found over the years when the flooding does occur, to make it, mitigate it, and lessen its impact on the village. And I really think that the 1.2 million could be better spent on some practical solutions here in the village.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I echo, I think we're all in agreement on this one. What the homeowners want to see is a concrete project or projects. They don't look at a study as a concrete project. They look at it as another study, and as all government does, is simply study things and never get anything done. And they've heard about some of these people lived there for 40 years down in Squires Gate, and they've been studied to death. And you mentioned Army Corps, and that's like a dirty word to them down there, because when they hear that, they then lose even more respect for the process. And that's you know, obviously been affected by what they've been through over the years, and we all understand that. But I think the high hopes that many of us had for this procedure, this process, was a kind of a concrete project. We're gonna lay something down here. We're gonna build something here. We're gonna elevate something here. We're going to, and the answer being it's going to be a study is not going over well. And that's, I think we all speak to the same families and the same people that have been so badly affected since I can remember as a kid, you know, in the 70s. You know, again, so I'm echoing just what you've already heard, obviously.
Okay.
Just one more. Was this the committee that said, was this a project that was approved by that committee?
Yes, it's, in fact, those 2 pages
The
are,
committee did approve.
yes,
this,
yes.
But let me just, I did speak to some committee members, and they did not have the information that this would just be a study. It would be the Army Corps would still have to do theirs, anything that would be done would need a new study, because it's not New York Rising who will be doing the work, it will be whomever the agency is that's doing the work, and every agency wants their own study. They're not gonna rely. They may use it as a resource, but on the whole, they're gonna want their own study. And I think they thought that if New York Rising said, here's the study, this is what can be done, then it was just get the people to do the work. And that's just not the case.
Bruce was on that committee, if you allow,
Of course.
Of course.
Yes, I was on the committee. And Suzanne knows this, I didn't love the idea of the study. The problem is, and everybody here addressed it, the people in the flood-prone areas, Squires Gate and Memorial Drive specifically, were looking for, as Matt said, that project, that build it, construct it, straighten it, whatever it was going to be. And in the course of all the meetings, we determined that there is no single project that's going to solve or even significantly impact. As the mayor said, as Frank, Bob, and Matt all said, and as I asked questions during the meetings last year of people who live in Squires Gate, if we were to come up with a project and it lessened the flooding in your basement from 5 feet to 3 feet, would you consider that a significant improvement? And universally the answer was no. Either you keep the water out of the basement or you find something else to spend it on. That was the way it went down.
I mean, taking them down by inches, when you're talking about 5 feet of water,
Yes.
or even a foot, the damage has been done.
And then I would wonder then if they were asked, I was at a couple meetings, but not all, so I wasn't there for any give and take, frankly, that you're referring to, Bruce. But then I would think if they were asked, okay, if we spend this money on an assessment of the problem, how do you feel about that? And I'm sure their answer would have been just as negative as reducing it from 5 feet to 3 feet. It would have been more of,
Again?
depending what happens with that assessment, but the problem here is if the assessment comes in and says, these are the projects that will then work, well, that's great, and that's a great recommendation, but it's not a commitment from anybody to actually do those things. And then you're subject to other entities like the Army Corps, and DC, and the rest who may want to study it even more. And that's the last thing they want to hear is more studies. So.
And Matt, I agree with you, because people did say we've had enough of the studies.
Right. If we had the money to do the studies and then the money to do the work, we'd be dancing in the streets.
Right.
But in actuality, that's not what's happening. So you're doing a study for someone else to say, okay, we have the same idea, but now we have to do our study of your study, and it's, if in fact it was the person that was doing the work, doing the study, I think then that's productive. But to have someone else to do the study, that somebody else is going to do the work, is not productive, because it's not going to work.
Are there projects in the plan that you think would work better for the village?
I do believe that there's other projects that should be looked at for sure. I mean, I'm very, very pleased, and I think the board is as well, with the water and sewer plants. I mean, I think that that's something that's definitely needed and on the top of my priority list anyway. I don't want to speak for the entire board.
I would like to, if you're going to spend the $1.2 million, I'd like to see, let's repair the problem with Chestnut Street.
Chestnut Street.
Yeah.
Chestnut Street is a major egress and egress for the railroad station, and it floods. I mean, and no matter who you talk to, everybody has their theory about why it floods. But again, for the village to take on a project like that, it may be as simple as a $50,000 pipe, or it could be as expensive as a $700,000. We don't know.
Yeah.
But that one, and that creates a huge problem. It creates a problem because people can't get to work because of the trains. They can't get home because of the trains. Fire equipment, ambulances, police cars, they can't get through that. The B-lot, when it rains, you take a rowboat to park your car. Literally. I literally have pictures when I ran the football league of me tying up a rowboat to the roof of the building that's down at the B-lot. So I mean, a $1.2 million for a project like that, where that dollar figure would encompass the engineering and most likely the repair and complete remediation of a major, major problem in this village. I mean, when we're looking at purchasing another place on the other side, we talked about relocating fire trucks to the other side, police cars, and this would all be eliminated and it would
Those are
solve
the
a
kind
very
of
practical purpose.
things that, this is solid money for us that we want to see solid things happening with.
Okay.
Well, let me, I hear what you're saying. I know people don't want to hear another study. But let me just walk you through what this work entails, because it's not just another study. And I think the change, or the thinking towards flood mitigation and watershed management has changed in the last 20 years. And I think the thinking has changed with Army Corps as well. They don't do the major great infrastructure projects they used to. They don't build dams as frequently, they don't redirect rivers as much. I'm not saying they never do, but their thinking has changed as well as to how to use more natural functions to manage a watershed. So the idea behind this, and I won't go on forever, but there's two components to this study. One is the creation of a watershed council, because you need to get everybody in this watershed on board to manage their own property within their municipal boundaries, or else Suffern will be forever impacted by flooding from your upstream neighbors.
You're absolutely right.
If you can't get them to sort of mind their P's and Q's, you're always going to feel the brunt of it.
You're absolutely right, but Suffern is bearing the brunt of the cost of that.
Right,
In other words, if this is a viable project, as you say, and I said from the beginning, we're talking about Montebello, Chestnut,
Yeah.
Ridge, Clark.
Yeah.
They're all gonna-
Right, they're all,
Orange County.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
So this is a major problem that impacts virtually half the communities in Rockland County.
Right, and watch the
And it's
people.
being done on our
Darn
dime.
million dollars.
If this is such a critical thing, then DEC should step in and say, listen, we're gonna fund this. The state should step in and say, listen, we're gonna fund this for Rockland County. Not part of Suffern study.
okay. Well, let me just continue through this little process. So then the idea was to create this council, and of course, Suffern would be a member. And then this council would provide input and feedback on the technical study that is done by an engineering firm or USGS. The engineering firm would look at existing conditions throughout the watershed. They would collect data on the description of the watershed, where the dams are, where obstructions are, specific information about flooding throughout the watershed, and they would develop a model. And this was the piece that was always the sticking point for the quarry. We don't have any model to test that concept. And so everybody thinks it's such a great idea because you got this big hole sitting there. Why can't we use it for water storage? But we've never been able to test that idea. So what this study does is it creates that model to test that idea and any other ideas that come up in the course of the study. So then, once you create this model, then the engineer would come up with a number of projects to mitigate flooding in the watershed. Maybe 3 to 5, I have no idea how many. But the idea then would be to prioritize those projects, test them in the model, and then figure out which ones are viable. The emphasis would be on flood mitigation of the village of Suffern. And that would be our emphasis and our priority, to address flooding in Suffern. So you would benefit from not only the watershed assessment, but also information on specific projects that would improve the condition here in Suffern. So that's the benefit to Suffern. It's not just the entire watershed. There would probably be other projects that would be funded through other monies, presumably by those municipalities.
Right, but here's the thing, the state should be doing that anyway. That's not something that should be burdened. Suffern should be footing the bill for other people to get these benefits. And the second part of that is that nothing in that waterway is going to be done without DEC, Drainage Agency, and Army Corps' approvals.
Yes.
So we could say, Matt could go in there tomorrow and say, let's build an 8-foot wall on both sides of the river all the way down Lonergan Drive. And conceptually, by an engineer, it may sound great, but when you get it to the table for the Army Corps, it's their ideas that they're going to work with. It's their ideas that they're going to go forward with. It's not anything that you, I, or anyone else is going to tell them that they're going to do. So it's got to be, these projects, if you're working in that river, it has to come from those entities, not from the village. And again, the watershed, I don't think that should be the village's responsibility.
Not to mention New Jersey.
And we also have
We still,
New Jersey.
all the flood mitigation you want to do in New York, if it turned out that, I mean, we've heard a number of people say that the problem actually is caused in Jersey, and it would require an alteration of their river routes, et cetera. All of this money means absolutely nothing, because we're right back to now we have to deal with New Jersey, who said, well, we're not doing this,
And
is what their last
And Bob, you
answer
couldn't
was.
be more right, because when the Army Corps did their study, there was a large portion of the problem that lied within New Jersey. And I think you and I, we talked about this once before, was getting all of the funding cooperation from New Jersey, Suffern, Rockland County, town of Ramapo. So it wasn't just here was the problem. You have to do that study all the way down there and get by-state cooperation. Because we could do all that we want here, but if they're not doing their part down there, guess what? We're getting it all back here.
This is a project New York State DEC and New Jersey DEP or EPA
And the
should
DEP
sit down to two state agencies and figure it out.
And the DEP is on board with us for New Jersey's. They're willing to sit down with the Army Corps, and they're willing to work with us, because I think 10 years ago, they did not realize the monumental problem that they were going to have. And as storms got bigger and more water started coming through, and they had more and more devastation on their end, then they realized, oops, we gotta do something, we better be nice and play nice in the sandbox, because whatever they do up there is gonna also affect us down here, as well as what we do down here is gonna affect them up there. So, it's a much bigger than just do a study and make recommendations. It's cooperation, it's, the Army Corps doing their study and believing that the project will work. So identifying the projects, the Army Corps has done that already. They know what they need to do, and they always make that assessment at the end of their study. But I just feel the watershed, that financial burden should the state should bear that burden, not the village. I mean, this money, what we believed we were being, and I think Bob said it very well, what we perceived as something that was going to be, real results, not studies. We're done with studies.
I would argue that you will get real results out of the study. And it's also the perfect timing, because you have the Bi-State Water Commission that has been formed of New York and New Jersey, and one of their geographic areas to look at is the Ramapo and Mawa. They don't have any money right now, but they do have a council. They do have the blessing of the two governors to do some work, so that goes a long way right there. You also have the Rockland County Water Management Task Force, which is also interested because of the fact that the Mawa and Ramapo, or the Ramapo, is part of the public water supply in future well fields. So there is sort of a critical time right now that you've never had so many people interested in water supply and flood issues.
We have those, we really have. There's always been interest, but just nothing's ever been done.
What if we don't, is there a stipend, if we don't do this with the $1 million, we don't get anything done? Is this part of this?
They're going to go ahead with it anyway.
Oh, no,
No.
absolutely not.
Okay, that's the impression that
I
we
mean,
were given,
I got
was that we don't really have
that's
say-so on this
what
project.
No, I'm sure that that's not what was intended to be conveyed. So if you guys got that idea.
No, when I had spoke to Suzanne about it initially, because I had concerns and she'll tell you, right from the very beginning when it was first proposed. And she said to her, well, that's kind of what New York Rising has decided, that
Yeah, that's what
that's what's going to be done. So it really wouldn't entail any of you having to be involved in it, because it's going to go outside of Suffern, it's going to go to Orangetown, it's going to here, there, and everywhere. So it wasn't like we sat down and talked about the water plant and the sewer plant and you know, the generators, it wasn't like that. It kind of was just, that's what they picked, New York Rising picked. So, okay, we're doing that, and then here's what we'll talk about.
So,
Well, I think it was explained in the course of the fact that it was a priority for the committee. And so one of the things that our office looks at are, you know, what projects have community support, and when it's in the plan and it's advocated for by the committee, then we assume that that means that there's support for it.
and our general process is, you know, we've got all these plans, there's proposed projects in the plans. You know, I believe the Village of Suffern has up to $3 million that's been allotted for projects here. And, you know, we always like to walk into conversations with municipalities with an idea in mind. But it's an idea, and it's something that, you know, we've looked into. I mean, we look at all the projects and think about what's eligible for this source of funding, what's technically feasible, what did we hear the most about from the ground, from the planning committees, et cetera. You know, but the purpose of this program is really to be more partners and not necessarily top down. It's supposed to be, you know, you meet in the middle, right? So if you're telling us that you really have concerns about this study, then our response is, well, okay, we hear you. Tell us what in the plan you believe would be a better fit for the village. And then we will go back and we will look at it for all those things that I just listed, that we kind of review for, get our ducks in a row, and come back to you as soon as we can with, yes, we can do this, or we have concerns and here's what they are, and let's talk about it.
The estimated cost for the assessment is $1 million. Is that right? I mean, that's what it says. So the up to $3 million, the other $2 million potentially is being set aside for projects as a result of the assessment? Am I?
No, the other one is just used for the water and sewer and for
Okay,
generators.
so that spends the entire $3.
No.
Or
Well,
close to, I mean,
you have 1.2 for the 3 infrastructure projects,
okay,
and then
$1 million for
$1
this.
million for this, and then the other 800,000 has not been.
That's not been allocated.
Right.
Okay. Now, did the planning committee, when they prioritized their wishes here, did they physically vote on?
Yes.
They voted.
They voted on
And this-
every
and this was one of the 3 that were top 3, I suppose.
No, any project that's in the plan that's listed as a proposed project
Mhm.
was voted on to be included as a
Right.
proposed
Yeah,
project.
but they're not prioritized.
But there's not a ranking.
Okay. So the water, sewer, this, were all approved by the committee,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And then there's potentially, not going to hold you to a number, another 800,000 or whatever
Yes.
that number is out there to be allocated to something else.
Yeah.
potentially.
No, not potentially, I mean,
To be allocated to
Yeah,
something else, but that hasn't been,
we want to spend every dollar
Right.
of the $3
We
million,
want to help.
like,
yes, that's what it is.
up to the last cent.
Right,
That's our goal,
okay.
is to spend the full allotment. So it's kind of tricky, because as you guys know, you get to the end of $3 million, sounds like a lot, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you're done. It's not.
Right.
It is a lot, but you know, there's, these projects cost a lot of money. So it's not always easy to actually spend that full $3 million. At the end of the day, we're just starting here, but you know, there are some communities that were in the first round of the New York Rising program where we're already moving a third project in their community, and we're hitting the end
Mm.
of their dollars, and we're saying, listen, if we go over, you know, we're gonna have to figure out what to do. You're gonna have to pony up the rest of the money. Are you comfortable with that? Because if not, then we need to pursue another project that is unlikely to go over, you know?
See, another area we talked about, that Chestnut Street, we just approved a 90-unit development with Transit Development District,
Okay.
which is right opposite the tunnel that floods. So we're looking for this thing to be a success, and possibly a model for the rest of the village to develop another area like this. And again, the flooding, the mitigation of that problem, you know, makes this a much more attractive.
May I just one thing? In the book, one of the proposed projects is titled Drainage Improvements to
Yeah, it's under
Transportation
Chestnut
Assets.
Street.
Uh-huh.
Chestnut Street is item 1
Yeah.
on that project.
What's
And
the
Orange
cost?
Avenue is number 2.
What was the
What's the cost?
on that?
One cost For Chestnut Street underpass, Orange Avenue stormwater, and 202, the costs are estimated to be $1.5 million, including $700,000 for Chestnut Street underpass and $750,000 for Orange Avenue and $50,000 for the 202 feasibility study.
But your 700 was right, Bob, you nailed it.
So
Yeah.
that's $1.5 million
Mhm.
instead of.
That's very real and practical
To us, that's
to
really.
us, which is real, which the people in this village, I mean, this has been going on, like I say,
40 years.
50 years I'm here, it's going on.
Mhm.
And this would be a very real practical solution and solve a huge, I mean, we're in the process of getting a grant to build a ramp over the tracks to get emergency vehicles.
Right,
Well, if we eliminate the problem, we
we
don't
don't need to do
it.
this, right.
Right.
So, I mean, I agree with Suzanne that, I mean, obviously, we came to you with this project thinking that it would be of great benefit to the village and that it had a lot of community support. We're hearing from you that there might be other projects that you prefer to do instead. So, I think to the extent that you want to take a look at the plan and get back in touch with what you might think would be a better.
I think we're all, I think the board unanimously is pretty much in favor of the Orange
So
Avenue.
ramification, take advantage.
Chestnut
That's just
Street,
something,
yeah,
yeah.
this is.
The
a
drainage project that you just said?
Drainage project is really, I think, best suited right now.
Okay, we'll take it back.
To make the difference.
While we didn't rank when we voted, it was just the ones we wanted to do versus, I can tell you that that project was well received by the members of the committee.
Okay, good. So, yeah, we'll go back and we'll talk to the people who look at eligibility, which, there are like rules about how we can spend this money, but what you're describing sounds like exactly what this money is meant to be
I mean,
spent
it's an
on,
emergency,
so
yeah, I mean, it's an emergency,
I don't-
safety, fire safety,
Right.
police safety. It's-
I don't anticipate any problems, but I will say that there are some things that you'd be surprised, but that do kind of pop up, and, we have consultants on board. Have you met Alberta?
Yes.
Yes.
So, that's their thing, that's their expertise, and they make sure that we all do what we're supposed to do and no money gets taken away at the end of the day. But, like there are tricky things, like in fire departments, you mentioned equipment, and that immediately, I was like, you can't do that, you can't do that. There are some things that you can do, there's some things you can't, that's why we hired HGA to help us look at these things. So we can ask Alberta, and we have somebody who's extremely experienced with like 30 years of experience. He's our expert with HGA. We can have them both look at this project. And then we'll run it past our sort of internal, political traps and just make sure everyone's comfortable with it. But
We would appreciate that very much if
Yeah.
we looked at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all we're asking for, because we just really feel like, studies are great if the work is gonna be getting done, but you could do the study.
what are you gonna do about Army Corps? Did you say that they were gonna be contacting us or Ellen Jackie?
No, Ellen was just wanted to ask the same question that I asked today about the Army Corps using your study. So,
Okay.
but, she
So
probably,
Army
But
Corps
is-
hasn't come forward with the project.
well, no, they're gonna have to redo the study's too old.
But are they going to do it? That's what
Oh,
I'm trying to
that's
understand.
what we're talking about right now. But let's just say this, if they decide not to do the study, because we're not on, up for it yet, if you guys do the study today, and the Army Corps is not ready for 5 or 6 more years to do anything, guess what? Your study now just sits out with the rest of the studies on the pile because it's not a viable study. So what I'm saying to you is, if in fact we knew Army Corps or whatever the entity was going to work, they're ready to fund projects, I would say the study would be phenomenal
Well, even
because
the
it would be a great
question
resource.
of doing the watershed study, Patrick Farms is gonna be developed along the watershed.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be
That's-
taken.
And that's a
Absolutely.
huge, that's a huge development.
And the study that's.
And so if you did a watershed study prior to that being built, I don't know if it's viable once it is built.
Mm.
Well, it would have to take into account any current or future developments. That's
Right.
that's what.
Yeah,
Here's the thing is,
And Patrick Farm is a known project, so that's.
Right, you make
You know,
an
we're
excellent
dealing with-
point,
we're dealing-
Amanda, because we don't have any concrete, promises that work's gonna be done at this point in time. If the Army Corps said, yeah, we're all yours, I would say, okay, well, that's great because we have the study or whatever, you maybe can help. But there's nobody who's ready to put their shovels to the ground. So if this study can be done, and then it'll sit there for 5 years, and if nobody's doing work, then it's like we can just file it with the rest of the studies that are now outdated.
You know, Army Corps wouldn't have to do this work, just like any other, we're working in Clarkstown right now, Army Corps is reviewing that project. It's not their project, they're just reviewing it like DEC.
Right.
So if we came up with a project within the watershed to help flooding within the village, they would review it, but they wouldn't necessarily do it. The village would do it with funding from.
But they would have to do their own
studies.
No, I think what Suzanne is saying is, you know, let's say you guys went forward in the watershed study scenario, you know, you spend $1.2 million, or $1 million, and we're honestly, like, we're questioning that this would cost $1 million. The estimates that are in the plan, just like the project descriptions that are in the plan, they're conceptual. I mean, people did work, but we weren't doing any actual, like, deep engineering or analysis, so I don't know if it would actually cost $1 million, but that's what's in the plan, so that's what we'll say. But, you know, then you do have money left over to get some of that work, the projects that come forward, done.
But the projects that need to be done there are far surpass what little bit
Would be left over.
Yeah, so they're just not realistic.
We don't know what those projects are, but
To make, we do kind of know what the projects are that, because the Army Corps has already identified projects that need to be done to change that, to have a positive, full effect. And there's certainly way more than anything we'd have left over.
In the southern tier, we're dealing with what sounds like a similar situation. There was a study that the Army Corps said that they were going to be doing. I believe it required match from the state, from DEC. And for whatever reason, it hasn't moved forward, and the community really wants to do the work, because then once you get the study, that's when you can do the work. And you know, they don't, similarly, they were concerned about spending New York Rising money on a study that is teed up for the Army Corps to do. And you know, I believe that we're working with Army Corps in that case to determine, you know, are you gonna do this or not? And if so, when?
Oh,
So-
we had those answers.
I mean, that might be something that we can pursue too, is to think about, well, because honestly, I mean, this idea there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I don't need to say that, you guys know that. And addressing some of the very concrete proposals in the plan is 100% a way to go. It's the way we're going in a lot of other communities. But it doesn't hurt to tee up the bigger things as well. And so, you know, if it makes me nervous to hear you guys say that, oh, it's going to be so much money and we need the Army Corps to do it. But we don't know where the Army Corps stands right now.
Well, we do as a village.
You could increase
What do
it
you-
by $1 million and we could do both.
Oh, well,
Just a problem.
Seems reasonable.
Come on.
so what do you mean the village does know?
Well, the Army Corps knows the work that needs to be done here.
But
It's
that was
just-
from a study in 2001.
The work doesn't change very much, it's just they have to redo the study because, you know, of natural changes within the river. But it doesn't change. The work that needs to be done stays the same, it's how to get to that work may change a little bit, but for the most part it doesn't. But the solutions don't change.
Okay. Why don't we just make a commitment then to go back and run the traps on the project that you mentioned, the drainage project, but also to explore, you know, what may or may not be happening with the Army Corps and a study, because, you know, if we can push that along, then that would solve both problems.
And I think a conversation with Ellen is really definitely, because she has all of our contacts, you know, who her staff's been working with. And I have some of it, but she has the full list because Ellen's been doing this for like the last 12 years. So she would have a lot of good information for you with regard to the Army Corps.
Okay, that's good to know. We have a lot of connections with the Army Corps. It's Chris Corman, right? We work so closely with them. So, you know, we can inquire through Department of Environmental Conservation and then also with the Army Corps.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to the agenda.
So thank you very much. We appreciate you hearing us and acknowledging our concerns. And so you'll be in touch?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
soon.
And will the village be voting on the other project?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I think we can put that on for the 29th. I think you guys are all ready for that, right? Let's put that on. We'll put it on for the 29th. We'll put on the generators and the water and sewer plant.
That's,
Now, DASNY has not given, they have not given Terry what we needed from them with regards to liability and all of that stuff. They had said that this is new to them and they really have not completed the project with the municipality yet. So they're still working through some of the legalities. So Terry's.
I understand that Dan Berkovitz has spoken with Terry.
He has. They've been in communication, but we haven't received anything as of yet. So as far as the DASNY portion of it goes, they said, well, we could start the work. And then we said, whoa, wait a minute. You can't start the work because we have to vote on it as a board, and we're certainly not going to do that until we know that the agreement is, covers both the village and the work. So we're just waiting on that.
And is Terry around? I thought he.
Terry's on vacation, and he had
Right.
told them that he would be on vacation this week, so had said they were trying to get it to him before he left, but they didn't.
They didn't, okay.
When does he return?
Monday. I'll be back on Monday.
So we can press Dan.
So while we can accept the projects, we still can't do the DASNY portion of it. And then our next meeting is not until September 24th, but that wouldn't keep us from having a special meeting.
Okay, good.
It's called a special meeting.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because, the thing about, well, first of all, if there are generators involved in this project, now I'm speaking completely out of turn here, so stop me if
Okay.
I'm way off. But it is my personal goal to try to push as many generator projects as we can now, just because they're pretty easy. And actually the first project that I think we're going to be rolling out upstate is a generator project that DASNY is doing in the town and the city of Amsterdam. So, it would be my hope that we can push that along. So it's always helpful to have a municipality be willing to hold a special session to push the process, because I'm learning this myself, every day counts. So, and we track this meticulously to see, all right, if we can get this by this date and that by that date, that means we can do this by that time.
Right. And the good part of it is that everybody's on board with the project. So,
Good, that's
even if you
great.
want, because Mr. Morris, myself, and Mr. Markunas are taking some vacation in August, but we're all on board with it, so it's not an issue that if one of us was not there.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Great.
Okay?
All right.
That's good for you guys?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for everything, appreciate it.